大地を踏みしめて君は目覚めてゆく天使の微笑みで連れ出して孤独でも一人じゃないさ生まれてきたことに必ず意味がある You can smile again 太陽浴びて You can fly away 世界は君の輝きを待ってる大地を踏みしめて君は目覚めてゆく天使の微笑みで連れ出して始まりはいつでも遅くないさ何度でも立ち上が
れ This is episode 4 of the MultiMangaverse. Welcome to it. My name is Alan, hoping that you are doing well whenever you're listening to this, wherever you may be in the world. Here we are, 4th episode of this series. Thanks to everyone who's been keeping up with it. If you're new, please check the description or the show notes. You'll find a link either to episode 1 or the playlist link for this series so that you can catch up. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. Hoping you've enjoyed learning about hunterxhunter. At the end of this episode, I think you might have made up your mind as to whether or not this manga is for you. So, before we get into volume 4, let's just do a quick recap of volume 3. A lot happened in that volume. So, it began with the 5 participants, Gon, his friends, Kurapika, Leorio, Killua, and of course the rookie crusher Tonpa. They were in Trick Tower, the location of the 3rd phase of the hunter exam. They had reached a point where they had to face 5 convicted prisoners who had been chosen to be taskmasters that they had to face in one-on-one battles. Gon won his battle. Tonpa didn't win his battle. The 3rd match was Kurapika versus a man named Majitani, who thought he could trick Kurapika with a tattoo that he had on his back of a 12-legged spider, which would have been the tattoo of the Phantom Troop. But Kurapika figured out that it wasn't the real tattoo, and upon seeing it, his emotions got the best of him. His eyes turned scarlet and he knocked out Majitani. In the 4th battle, Leorio versus a woman named Leruto. Majitani had not woken up from the fight with Kurapika, so Leorio and Lelut had to, their battle was in the form of making bets to figure out whether Majitani was conscious or not, would he wake up or not. And it was back and forth, but what ended up happening was Leorio was outsmarted by Lelut, and in the end, as a result, Leorio losing that battle, he lost 50 hours for the participants, which meant that after going through this challenge with the 5 taskmasters, they would have to spend 50 hours in a room before they could continue on through Trick Tower. So the next battle after that was Killua versus one of the most infamous mass murderers in Saban city history, a man named Jones, who had killed 46 people, and as a result he was spending over 900 years in prison because of this. And He didn't care about the hunter exam. All he wanted to do was hurt Killua. But Killua had no problem. He just killed him without any trouble. He ripped out the man's heart. And for a moment, Jonas got to see Killua holding his heart. And at the moment where he begged for Killua to give him back his heart, Killua smiles and he crushes that heart as Jonas just watches and collapses and he dies eventually. So because of Killua's victory, they defeated the challenge of the Taskmasters and they progressed through Trick Tower. Eventually they get through all the other challenges. They reach a point where they had to make a decision, either to take a long path or a short path. Long path, all 5 participants could take that path, but it would take them about 45 hours to get through it. The short path, only 3 of the 5 could take it, and the other 2 would have to remain behind until the end of the 3rd phase. So what ended up happening, thanks to Gon and a clever little plan, they chose the long path, and then they made a hole through a wall which separates the long path and the short path. And they jumped over to the short path and made their way all the way down to the bottom of Trick Tower just in time to join the other participants. So they make it through the third phase. They meet Examiner Lippo, who tells them about the 4th phase, which would involve the participants drawing cards. These cards would represent targets that they must search for, and then they steal their number badges, the badges that they've been wearing since the beginning of the exam. And this 4th phase would take place on Zeville Island. So the participants were transported to Zeville Island and they were to spend a week on the island. For this 4th phase, the rules for it were, if you steal your target's number badge, you get 3 points. If you manage to keep your own badge, you earn 3 points. If you have a minimum of 6 points and you can last that week, you pass the 4th phase. Gon, unfortunately, he drew card 44, which represents Hisoka. And now, once they were on the island, Gon was immediately focusing on reaching Hisoka. He realized that confronting him in a one-on-one battle would not end very well for him. So he spent some time training with his fishing rod to steal Hisoka's badge fast enough before Hisoka realizes what happens. The training goes well. Gon manages to improve his accuracy, and then he went out to search for Hisoka on the island. As for his friends, Leorio, he met Tonpa, and at first it looked like Tonpa only wanted Leorio's help because of some stomach trouble, but it was a trick because Tonpa had his own medicine, and also although before the trick was revealed, he did share some information about Leorio's target, a woman named Ponzu. So in exchange for that information, Leorio would have offered Tonpa some medicine, but that's when the trap was revealed because Tonpa was working with a participant named Somi, and they managed to steal Leorio's badge, and Leorio was chasing Tonpa through the forest. Tonpa didn't see where he was going and he got tripped by Kurapika, who showed up just in time to team up with Leorio, and they succeeded in getting back Leorio's badge from Somi, and Kurapika got Tonpa's badge. Tonpa was his target. So now they were off to search for Leorio's target, Ponzu. Killua was in another part of the island. he realized that someone was following him, and the little bit of killua that we saw on Seville in this volume was him calling out whoever was following him, telling them to come out and face him. And then at the end of the chapter, at the end of the volume, we saw Gon had found Hisoka, and then another participant named Shishito showed up. He had been looking for Hisoka and wanted him to fight him in an honorable battle, a battle between warriors. But Hisoka would not fight Shishito because Shishito had been dealt a fatal wound. So Hisoka just didn't see any point in fighting him because he was already dying. So there's no fun in that. So Shishito, before he could attack Hisoka, he gets killed by Gitaraka, who shows up. And we learn from the dialogue between Gitaraka and Hisoka that they know each other. And perhaps it was Gitaraka who had been phoning Hisoka during the exam when they were in the swamp and when here on Seville Island. So Gitaraka had acquired his target's badge. He'd acquired a badge of participant named Sipa or Saipa or Supa. He didn't need that badge. He gave it to Hisoka. So for Hisoka, all he needed now was 2 badges, and he would have his 6 points. So Gon followed Hisoka all the way up until the end of the chapter, where Hisoka is standing on a cliff, and he looks down into the forest and he sees 2 participants, Leorio and Kurapika. I was about to say Hisoka there. So that was where volume 3 ended. So now let's get into volume 4, which is titled Endgame, or The Final Test Begins. It was released on the 4th of February 1999 in Japan, and then on the 6th of September in 2005 by Viz Media. That was the English version. It contains chapters 27 to 35 and continues the first story arc of Hunter x Hunter, the Hunter exam. So let's get into it. Chapter 27, A Volatile Situation. So Hisoka has spotted Leorio and Kurapika. This pleases him. He jumps off the cliff, heading for that forest below. Gon has realized that Hisoka has spotted his 2 friends, and he hurries after Hisoka. Although this would be a good chance for him to try and steal Hisoka's number badge, Gon realizes that his friends are in serious danger now, so helping him, that's the top priority. So in the forest, Leorio and Kurapika, they meet Hisoka. He tells them he just needs 2 more points, so he politely asks them to hand over their badges. Leorio wants to protest, but Kurapika, he speaks up and he says Hisoka didn't indicate if he and Leorio are his targets. So he goes on to explain which badges that he and Leorio have in their possession. They've got their own badges, plus Tonpa's badge and Somi's badge. Kurapika is willing to give away Somi's badge to Hisoka, but as for his own badge, he's not going to get it. He's not going to get Leorio's badge. They would have to fight for that to happen. So Hisoka, he looks at them, he just laughs, and he's seeing them. They've got their weapons out. Kurapika, he's got his wooden swords. Leorio, he's got his switchblades. Gon, he's managed to hide himself in a nearby bush, watching as this goes on. So Hisoka asks Kurapika, what's his number badge? What is the number of his badge? It's 403. Hisoka confirms Kurapika is not his target, so he'll settle with taking Somi's badge. Maybe that's the one that he's targeting. So Kurapika, he places Somi's badge inside a nearby tree, and he and Leorio, they back away from the area. Hisoka tells them, "You can leave, I'll wait right here." And once they're gone, Hisoka, he approaches the tree to have a look at Somi's badge. As he's going to the tree, he makes a little comment about how much progress Kurapika and Leorio have made in such a short space of time, but they still have a long way to go. So he gets Somi's badge, he sees the number, and it's not the number he's looking for. So now Hisoka has to carry on to find someone else. So Gon, in the bushes nearby, he's relieved that his two friends, they made it out safe and sound. That's one thing he doesn't have to worry about. So it's back to focusing on Hisoka and finding the right opportunity to take that badge. Then Gon becomes aware of the possibility of Hisoka meeting another participant who might just decide to hand over the badge instead of fighting Hisoka, because Gon is hoping for Hisoka to be distracted through a fight with another participant, and then that's when he'll make his move to steal the badge. But if there's a participant who just hands over their badge, Gon's chance, that goes out the window. He hadn't considered that. Then he suddenly stops. He senses something heavy, something menacing that just makes him turn in Hisoka's direction. And the page where Gon turns, we see the face of Hisoka. His bloodlust has just shot up, and he's just got this really dark look on his face. There'll be a link to it in the description. I encourage you to have a look at that, and you just imagine that face popping up in the dark as you're making your way home at night. See if you can imagine that. So even the animals that are in and around the area, they have picked up on Hisoka's bloodlust, and they are fleeing as fast as they can get. And Hisoka is saying, "Oh, it's thanks to Leorio and Kurapika, they've got him all fired up now." But he then tells himself to calm down, keep it together, and the bloodlust, it cools off. Gon is in the bushes. He has not moved after sensing this massive pressure and this rush of bloodlust. He's just staying wherever he is until Hisoka has calmed down enough. Then he begins making his way through the forest. And despite the bloodlust having cooled off, Gon is certain that if Hisoka were to meet someone else right away, they wouldn't be shown any mercy. So he follows after Hisoka. Eventually he goes up a tall tree. He has a look around and he sees another participant who is headed for the spot that Hisoka is going towards. That participant is number 281, Gon. So Gon descends from the tree and he hurries to hide in some bushes in that area where Gon and Hisoka are going to collide. And Gon, he plans to make his move as fast as he can before Hisoka realizes what happens. And the chapter ends with Hisoka arriving in that area. He sees Gon and he's charging towards him. That's how we kick off this volume. Chapter 28, a huge favor. So Gon sees Hisoka charging towards him. He's got this wide-eyed, crazy look on his face. And in Hisoka's right hand, there's a playing card, of course. Gon is watching. As he's watching this happen, he starts swinging the fishing rod, waiting for the perfect moment. So Gon, he stands ready. He's got a rapier in hand. And this is good news for Gon because it means there's going to be a fight. There's a chance for him to try and steal that badge. So he swings that fishing rod forward, and at the point where Hisoka strikes Gon, the hook of Gon's fishing rod, clings to Hisoka's numb badge, pulls it off of his chest, and Gon pulls back on the line, and he catches the badge. Hisoka sees his badge going off of him. Gon also saw the badge being taken, but Hisoka dealt him a fatal hit, so Gon doesn't see anything else. His neck has been sliced open and blood just gushes out, and that's the end of him. And there's a brief moment where Hisoka sees who took his badge. Gon sees Hisoka looking at him, and there's a look of surprise at first, then a look of recognition, because Hisoka knows Gon, of course. But there's no time to waste. Gon gets moving. He's running as fast as he can from that place. He's done it. He's actually succeeded in taking Hisoka's badge. But then a strange feeling runs through him suddenly, and Gon, he starts slowing down, and then he falls forward onto the ground, dropping Hisoka's badge, his fishing rod as well. He can't move. And then standing behind Gon, we see someone show up. It's Kireta the huntsman. He just walks up, he picks up Hisoka's badge, and then he plucks out a small blow dart which is stuck in the back of Gon's neck, as he tells him that there were 7,000 times when he could have shot Gon. 7,000 is also the number of times Gon spent training to catch those fisher birds in the previous volume. All that time, Gon had left himself open, and now he's been caught. So Kireta searches through Gon's satchel. He finds Gon's number badge and he takes it. And as he's leaving, he commends Gon for his skills, and off he goes. It's bad luck for Gon. So time passes while Gon is on the ground trying to move. He looks ahead and he sees Hisoka approaching him. And there are those hemotropic butterflies. They are flying all around Hisoka because there are blood stains on his clothes. And in Hisoka's right hand, he's carrying the decapitated head of Kireta the huntsman. And on his chest, he's wearing Kireta's number badge, number 384. He praises Gon for his efforts to reach him and to take his badge. And Hisoka says he wouldn't have noticed him thanks to how Gon was able to hide himself like he did. So Hisoka, he drops his own badge in front of Gon. He also leaves Gon's badge and he turns to walk away, telling Gon that it'll take about 10 days for a normal person to recover from the effects of the blow dart which hit him. But Hisoka's sure that Gon will recover in no time, because there are only 4 days left for this fourth phase. So Gon, he tells Hisoka he's leaving to take his badge back, but Hisoka refuses. He's got the badge of his target, Kireta, so he doesn't need his own badge anymore. Gon can have it, and for the time being, he can consider it a debt that he owes to Hisoka. Gon, he struggles to his feet. He's holding up Hisoka's badge, and he's telling him, I don't want to owe you anything, take the badge. And Hisoka, he stops. He finds this amusing. So he turns around and he starts walking towards Gon. He's just dropped Kireta's head on the ground. He then explains to Gon that he chose to let Gon live so that he can grow into a worthy opponent for him. And then with one left punch, he sends Gon flying. He just bounces off the ground into some bushes nearby. And then Gon, Hisoka, turns around again and he starts walking away. And he says until Gon can deliver the same punch back to him, he's not taking that badge. And the chapter ends with Gon. He's sitting in a hollowed out tree. He's upset, he's just sitting there. And his right cheek He's swollen, so he's just sitting there, he's upset. What could he have done, you know? So we move on to chapter 29, Killua's case. Shift over to where we left off Killua in the previous volume. He's still addressing the person who has been following him, and he tells them to stop wasting time because they wouldn't succeed catching him if they continued trying to follow him. That person is one of the Amori brothers, Imori, who is hiding in some bushes and waiting things out until Killua loses his cool, becomes afraid, and when he gets distracted, Imori plans to swoop in and steal Killua's badge. He's not going to show any mercy. Yeah, the thing is, as much as Imori is talking all tough and all deep down, he's the one who's afraid to face Killua. So this was just a funny moment where he's talking all tough and all, but he is still hiding in the bushes. So then Killua decides that he will search out his opponent, and he comments that, this is silly. Going through all this trouble for someone who might not even be worth 3 points. This comment is what gets to Imori, and he has to make up his mind fast. Does he attack Killua or not? He's just a kid. Surely he can take him on. Shouldn't be a problem. Because if he doesn't, his two brothers won't let him hear the end of it for failing to take a badge from a little kid like Killua. So as Imori is thinking about what to do next, his brothers arrive. They want an update on Imori's mission to take Killua's badge. They see Killua's just standing just up ahead, and it becomes pretty obvious that Imori hasn't done anything yet. So his two brothers, they just gang up on him and they start calling him a coward for not taking on Killua. Imori tries to explain his way out of this by saying, he was just taking his time in getting the badge, there's no rush. But when Umori threatens Imori, he was going to hit him. This is when Imori gets up, he goes forward to confront Killua. So he tells Killua, hand over the badge. Killua refuses, and this is when Imori just kicks him forward, kicks him backwards, and Killua is just sent flying, but the whole time he's got his hands in his pocket, so he just lands on his back. He's just lying there on the ground. He's not harmed or anything. Then he just gets back onto his feet. The Amori brothers they're shocked by this because they thought Imori's kick would have dealt a lot more damage. So then Killua digs out from his right pocket of his shorts. He digs out a number badge, 198. That's Imori's badge. And Killua says it's not the badge he's looking for, but close enough, which means that the other two, one of them is number 199, his target. So now the brothers, seeing this, realizing, this isn't going well, they get serious and they try to approach Killua in an attempt to gang up on him. But what Killua does is he just runs up one of the trees, and while the brothers are looking up trying to find him, Killua jumps down and lands behind Amori. He kicks the back of his legs to make Amori kneel, and then Killua presses his right hand. The nails of his right hand, they extend and they press against Amori's neck, drawing a little blood. And he tells them his nails are sharper than the blade of a knife. So Imori and Umori, they advance, they stop approaching Killua. Killua, he asks Umori if he's 199. Umori confirms it. Killua asks for the badge. Umori hands him the badge. Killua has also taken Amori's badge, 197, but he doesn't need either of them because he's got his target's badge now. So he proceeds to throw away the other two badges, not just toss them into some nearby bushes. No, he chucks them into the sky in different directions just to add insult to injury. And he tells the brothers, oh, you've got 5 days to find those badges. Bye. And Killua just goes, leaving the Amori brothers there to, what do they do now? 5 days to find those 2 badges which have been thrown in different directions. What are the chances of them finding them? So then we see one of the badges is flying through the air over the forest. And there's a participant running through the forest until they jump up in the air and they catch that badge. And who else could show some agility like this but Hanzo the ninja, who has been targeting 197. And he thanks Killua because now Hanzo doesn't have to do any work to get it. So he's thinking, yeah, I finally got my badge. He turns the badge around and he sees it's not 197, it's 198. And the chapter just ends with, a moment with Hisoka, not Hisoka, but Hanzo. He's on his hands and knees, disappointed that he jumped up in the air for nothing. It's not the badge he was looking for. That's Hanzo for you. Let's go to chapter 30, the slithering trap. You see Leorio and Kurapika, they are making their way through the forest. 3 days have passed since their encounter with Hisoka, and now it's almost the end of the 6th day of the 4th phase. They haven't seen any other participants since Hisoka, so Leorio suggests that they head to the landing spot just to check what the situation is like over there. Maybe by now some participants who have 6 points have gathered at the landing spot. They get to the landing spot from some bushes where they're hiding. They scope out the area, but nobody's there, which makes sense because nobody would just be standing around out there in the open. So Kurapika says maybe he and Leorio could arrange a date and time to meet, each of them arriving at the landing spot from different sides, which would give them a chance to look around better than from one side. But that plan goes out the window because they are joined by Gon. He has seen other participants who are on the way to the landing spot, and he heard them making similar plans to what Kurapika has proposed. But, well, that plan's gone. Gon is here now. So Kurapika, he asks Gon, did you get your target's badge? Gon, he confirms that he's got it. But what's interesting is he doesn't outwardly say, yes, I got the badge. He just says, I'm fine. And it's for obvious reasons, given who his target was. But the good thing is his right cheek is not as swollen anymore. It's just bruised up, but at least it's recovering. Leorio, upon hearing that no Gon is found, he's got his target's badge, realizes he's the one between them who doesn't have his target's badge. He asks Gon if he has seen any female participants, but Gon has not. Kurapika, he puts forward 4 possibilities of what Ponzu's current status could be. She's either A, alive and well, and still has a badge. B, she's fine, but doesn't have her badge. Or C, something has happened to her, but she still has the badge. Or possibility number 4, something has happened to Ponzu, and she doesn't have the badge. And to expand on that third possibility, Kurapika says to Leorio that there's also a chance Ponzu might have hidden the badge before whatever happened to her happened, which would make it difficult for them to find the badge. So Gon asks if they know anything in particular about Ponzu. He gives an example. He knows about the special cologne that Leorio wears, so he's able to find him. And Kurapika thinks for a moment and he says, maybe Ponzu, the chemicals that she uses, they might have a smell. So perhaps Gon could try and find such a smell. Gon is willing to try. So Leorio and Kurapika, they then follow after Gon through the forest. It takes them through the rest of the day until sometime in the evening, where Gon has picked up a smell and it leads him to a small cave. So as they are waiting outside the cave, Leorio says to the boys to stay put while he goes into the cave to investigate. So Leorio checks the entrance area of the cave for any traps. Doesn't find any. Goes back out to his friends and he says he's going further into the cave. And he's going to do it on his own. So Kurapika suggests that he and Gon will follow after Leorio if they don't get any sign from him after 30 minutes. But Leorio refuses, saying he wants to do this alone. But Kurapika and Gon, they will not let him do it on his own. They'll stick around. It's their choice. So Leorio, he doesn't protest this. He decides, okay, I'll go in anyway. So he leaves behind his suitcase. He's got a cigarette lighter in his hand. He goes back into the cave. Time passes. Night falls. Kurapika and Gon are still waiting for Leorio. And then from within the cave, they hear Leorio shouting, saying, "Don't come into the cave, there are snakes inside." And the boys immediately get on their feet. They race into the cave, eventually reaching the main area where they find Ponzu, Barbon. They are sitting against the cave wall, and there's Leorio on the floor, lying on the floor with a couple of dead snakes around him. Just a quick side note, Barbon, initially I was pronouncing it Bourbon because of how it's spelled, the English version of his name. The Japanese version is Barbon, B-A-B-O-N. So I'm going with that, the pronunciation of his name. It's Barbon. So they found Leorio on the floor now. The snakes have been sliced in two. So Kurapika and Gon, they hurry over to Leorio. He's struggling to speak. He's asking them why did they follow him. But Kurapika sees that there are several bite marks on Leorio. Gon picks up one of the dead snakes, looks at it and he says, "These are earth snakes, whose venom isn't very strong, but Leorio has been bitten too many times. They have to extract the venom right away." So then Gon proceeds to extract the venom, and afterwards he helps Kurapika raise up Leorio, and they prepare to leave the cave. They have to get to a doctor as soon as possible. But then Ponzu speaks, saying they shouldn't bother leaving, because those who enter the cave and then try to exit are attacked by snakes. This is a trap that Barbon has set. And we see several snakes. They block the entrance into this main area. And Ponzu continues, saying that the snake bite will leave them paralyzed and in a few hours they'll die. So Kurapika, he turns to Barbon and he says if it's a badge that he wants, he's willing to give Barbon all their badges if he can just let them leave immediately. And then Ponzu says it's useless because Barbon is dead. That's where chapter 30 ends with this shocking revelation. They've entered this trap and the man who has set it is dead. So chapter 31, by the skin of their teeth. Now Kurapika is shocked by this revelation. How can he be dead? And Ponzu says she's the one who killed Barbon, but she won't tell Kurapika how she did it because it's a family secret. So Kurapika goes over to Barbon's body to examine it. And when he tries to touch it, many snakes, they quickly slither over and they gather around Barbon's body. And Ponzu says that the snakes also attack anyone who comes near Barbon. So Kurapika, he sees Barbon's left hand. He notices that it's swollen. And he turns to Ponzu, says he's figured out how Barbon was killed. Ponzu must have used bees to sting him multiple times, which then led to Barbon dying of anaphylactic shock. So Ponzu explains what happened. She had been following Barbon, who was a target, until she saw him walk into the cave. Then at the entrance of the cave, Ponzu released a soporific gas from a canister and waited. Then when she entered the cave, she found Barbon. He was fast asleep, but the trap had already been set, and not all the snakes had been put to sleep by the gas, because there were some snakes which had hidden themselves in cracks in the cave wall. They didn't attack Ponzu because she quickly stepped back. She had tried to approach Barbon's body, then she quickly stepped back, and the snakes, that's why they didn't attack her. Then Ponzu, she taps the hat that she's wearing, and it's from this hat that several bees, they fly out. And she tells Kurapika and Gon that these bees, they only attack if Ponzu shouts or if she goes into a state of shock. She didn't think that Barbon would die from the bee stings. She wasn't even aware that he was allergic to bee stings also. And there was no way for her to help him because of the snakes. So she's been stuck down here, and she just decided to wait until officials from the Hunter Association, they come over and find her. And this is thanks to there are small transmitters that are in the number badges of the participants. But the bad news is the officials will only arrive in the last day of the fourth phase. But this won't do for Kurapika. He's not going to wait because Leorio needs medical attention as soon as possible. Sponzo again tells him that it's pointless to try anything. She warned Leorio, but he wouldn't listen. And you see that as soon as Leorio had called out to Kurapika and Gon, warning him about the snakes would then attack him. So Ponzu says the boys have no choice but to wait until they're rescued. Hopefully Leorio is strong enough to hold on a little longer. So they just have to sit it out. So Kurapika is trying to find a way out of this situation. There must be something that they can do. But then Gon speaks up and he tells Kurapika, look after Leorio. There's a way. So Gon gets up and he goes over to Barbon's body. Ponzu is watching this and she's asking him, what are you doing? Didn't you hear what I just said before? But Gon, he's not paying attention to her. He gets a hold of Barbon's collar and the snakes, they just jump on Gon. And rightfully so, Ponzu is horrified, Kurapika is speechless. If you're not a fan of snakes for whatever reason, yeah, this chapter is not for you. I'll put a link to showing the page where Gon he's just gotten hold of Barbon's body and he's just covered in snakes. It's quite a sight to see. So despite the snakes being on him, Gon, he doesn't back down. He searches through Barbon's clothes until he finds a bottle of antidote and a pair of syringes. He throws these to Kurapika and Gon just collapses on the floor. And this is when the snakes, they leave him. And Kurapika, seeing this, asks, are you alright? Are you okay? But Gon, while on the floor they're struggling and shaking, covered in bite marks, he just tells Kurapika, take care of Leorio first. So Kurapika, he injects Leorio with the antidote, and Leorio, he falls asleep. Then he hurries over to attend to Gon, while Ponzu says she's surprised to see Barbon had antidote on him. But Kurapika says the chances of him having antidote were high because the antidote could have been used in negotiating. If his opponents were caught in one of his traps, he's got the antidote, they could negotiate with them to get their badge. So Gon asks Ponzu if she has any more of the soporific gas, because if she does, he then holds up Barbon's badge, 103. He's willing to trade it for the gas. So, if she's willing to trade, she'll at least get her target's badge, and she'll have 6 points. Ponzu, she does have one more canister of gas, and she says it would take about 5 minutes for the gas to envelop this room and neutralize all the snakes that are there. There's no problem for Gon, because he says he can hold his breath for almost 10 minutes. 9 minutes, 44 seconds being his personal record. He assures Ponzu he won't leave her behind, so she can trust him. So Gon prepares himself, takes a deep breath, gives Ponzu the thumbs up to release the gas. She opens the canister, releases the gas, and everything except Gon, they fall asleep. Gon, you see him is counting the seconds, counting down 5 minutes. And when the time is there, he dashes out of the cave while carrying the other 3 participants. Leorio has got his briefcase, it's tied to one of his hands. Can't forget about the briefcase, of course. So once everyone is outside, Gon, he leaves Barbon's badge with Ponzu, but then he takes Ponzu's badge because Leorio needs it, of course. And Gon, he just hopes Ponzu doesn't hold it against him, and he considers it payment for the little transport that he had to do to get them out of the cave. So Leorio's got his badge now. Let's get into chapter 32. Actually, I just wanted to say something about Gon's actions in that chapter. I miss seeing something like this, especially in modern manga of the shonen battle variety, where your main character just continues to give you reasons to invest in them and wanting to see what else they do in the story. It's just that nowadays, if you just pick up a shonen battle manga, it's usually after a while, if you're lucky, where the main character has moments like this where they do something extraordinary that just makes you say, wow, okay, I'm invested, I want to see what you can do. A lot of times the moments that they have, they just come off as you've seen them before many times, because a lot of shonen battle heroes, they are all following the template that was set up by Goku from Dragon Ball. Whether it's the character's design, their personality, and so on, it just doesn't come off as unique anymore. And I can tell you that I have not seen any other main character do something like this, where they are willing to be bitten by multiple snakes just to search for an antidote. Ponzu, I should have mentioned this, but Ponzu makes a little comment that he was willing to do this while not knowing if Barbon had an antidote or not. So yeah, it's just moments like this that just made me be a big fan of Gon, because he might not have superpowers like Goku, might not be a Saiyan or transform into Super Saiyan, whatever, but he does stuff like this for his friends, willing to go this far for his friends. It just makes him more of a cool character than anything else. So anyway, let's get into chapter 32 and the final test. An announcement is relayed from the transport boat to the remaining participants on the island. It's the next day, informing them to get to the landing spot because the fourth phase is ending soon. They have 1 hour to get to the landing spot. Any participants who show up after that will be disqualified. Also, from this point onwards, any stolen badges will not count. There will be a verification process done, and those participants who break this rule will also be disqualified. So we see participants, they are arriving at the landing spot. 9 participants have arrived at the landing spot, and we see the Hunter Association airship making its way to Zeto Island to pick them up. In the description there will be a link showing the 9 participants, but since we're dealing with text right here, these are the 9 participants: Hisoka, Gon, Kurapika, Poko or Pokuru, Leorio, Kitaraka, Killua, Bodoro, and Hanzo the ninja. Then they get on the airship. As it's making its way to the location of the 5th and final phase, Chairman Netero is dining with his assistant Satotsu, Lipos there, Menshi, and Buhara, and he expresses how happy he is with this year's crop of exam takers. Of the 9 who have succeeded so far, 6 of them are taking the hunter exam for the first time, and this doesn't happen often because usually a gap of 10 years can go by without a rookie advancing this deep into the exam. But this is the 4th time where such a situation has happened, where you have several rookies in the exam showing up, and they've got so much potential. And Mensch is surprised by this, and she asks the assistant, does he know how old Netero is? And the assistant just tells her, it's been about 20 years since the chairman has told him that he's 100 years old. And 100 years old. And you go back to the little game that he played with Gon and Killua, and you wonder, is this man really over 100 years old? So Satotsu, he asks Netero, what's in store for the 5th phase, because none of the examiners have been informed about it. Netero says he plans to have the participants compete in special fights, but in order to set up these fights, he needs to speak to them individually. Meanwhile, somewhere on the ship, in one of the passageways, we see Gon. He's just looking through a window. He's joined by Kurapika, and he says he's aware that they're heading towards the final phase. So he wants to take this opportunity to thank Gon, because he wouldn't have come this far in the exam if it wasn't for him. And Gon just smiles and waves it off. There's no need to thank him. Then Kurapika asks Gon, did anything happen to him during the 4th phase? Kurapika noticed that he looked strange when they met up, and it's been bothering him. What happened? So Gon tells Kurapika about Hisoka being his target and what happened after Gon took Hisoka's badge. The affair with being stopped by Kireta and Hisoka, killing Kireta and letting Gon keep his badge and refusing to take it back, and then hitting Gon when he demanded that Hisoka take it back. Not being able to hit Hisoka back, to strike him back, that really upset Gon, and we see he's got tears of frustration as he's explaining to Kurapika what happened. But he wipes away the tears, he cheers up, and he says the experience left him feeling terrible, and he thought he wouldn't have the will to continue, which is why he went in search of Kurapika and Leorio. he needed someone to be by his side, and he wanted to be useful to them. So upon hearing all this, Kurapika, he sincerely thanks Gon again, and Gon, he thanks him right back. And afterwards, an announcement comes through the speakers informing the participants that the chairman will be meeting each of them shortly. When a participant's number is called, they must get to the first reception room of the first floor. The first participant who is summoned is number 44, Hisoka. And this catches Kurapika and Gon by surprise, because what could Netero want to speak to them about? So we see Hisoka enter the room. He finds Netero. He's already seated, and he asks Netero, surely this isn't the final phase, right? Netero just replies saying, well, it's related to the final phase. He has some questions that he wants to ask Hisoka. So Hisoka sits across from the chairman and is asked why he wants to become a hunter. So Hisoka says he's not focused specifically on becoming a hunter, but having the title of hunter, it has its benefits. For example, not being held fully accountable for killing someone. So, Netero just says, I see. And then he asks Hisoka, which participant has his attention the most? Hisoka says, Killua. Then also adds Gon is also on his radar, but he's not yet on the same level as Killua. But, however, Hisoka, he does hope to fight Gon someday. Then Netero asks him one last question. Out of the other participants, which one does Hisoka not want to fight the most? At the moment, Hisoka says Gon, then says even Killua. But then, as his final answer, he settles on Gon. Then he just adds that the person that he really wants to fight right now the most, it's Netero. But Netero just thanks Hisoka and just says he may leave. He says this while not even looking at Hisoka. He's just looking at what is written on a piece of paper. Yeah, and Hisoka just leaves. He's not too happy. Doesn't really like Netero because it's like he just gave him a look of indifference even after saying, oh, I want to fight you right now. So that's Hisoka. Then we see the other participants each getting their time with Netero, and we get their responses to the last two questions that Hisoka was asked. First off is Poku. He says number 404, Kurapika. He's got his attention the most. He looks like a well-balanced potential opponent, but he doesn't think he would stand a chance against Hisoka, so he would want to fight him. Killua is interested in fighting Gon, given that they are the same age and everything, so why not? He's not interested in fighting Poku because he thinks he'll be bored by that match. Then there's Bodoro. He doesn't like Hisoka, but he believes that Hisoka is an opponent you'll face eventually. As for the participants that he doesn't want to fight, he doesn't want to fight Gon and Killua because they're children. Little does he know. Gitaraka, his responses are very brief. He just says number 99 and number 44. He wants to fight Killua, he doesn't want to fight Hisoka. That's it. Gon says his focus is still on Hisoka, so that's the participant he would want to fight right away. As for the participant he doesn't want to fight, he can't pick one. It wouldn't be easy for him, so he just says he doesn't want to fight Killua, Leorio, and Kurapika. Hanzo says he wants to fight Hisoka, given how dangerous he is, but at the same time, Hisoka is the participant that Hanzo wouldn't want to fight. Makes sense. Kurapika says in a positive way he would be interested in fighting Gon, but in a negative way he would be interested in fighting Hisoka. If there's a good reason for Kurapika to fight, he'll fight. He's not the type to fight for no reason though. Then Leorio says he's interested in fighting Gon out of respect and because he wants Gon to reach the end of his hunter exam. But it's for the same reasons that Leorio doesn't want to fight Gon. So after getting all of these responses, Netero is looking at a canvas he's been writing on. He's pleased with the interviews, and then he shows the canvas to examiners and his assistant. They have a look at this, but Buhara is a little worried and he asks Netero, is he sure about these matchups? And Netero says he's sure. Then he makes an announcement to the participants to let them know that the airship is about to arrive at the location of the 5th phase. Netero reminds them that if they win, they will become hunters. And the chapter ends with the airship reaching the roof of a big building. Chapter 33. The final test begins. The big building is a hotel that is run by the Hunter Exam Commission. This is where the participants will be staying until the conclusion of the 5th phase. It's been 3 days since the end of the 4th phase, so we've arrived for the 5th phase now. You see the participants, Netero, the examiners, and a group of new officials, these men in suits. They've gathered in a big room. Netero announces to the participants that the last test will be in the form of a tournament made up of one-on-one fights. He's standing next to a board with a sheet over it. He removes the sheet to reveal the matchups that he has put together for the fights. There will be a link in the description, the show notes, so you can see the matchups. But I'll just try and explain them here. There's a left side, there's a right side. On the left side, there's Hanzo versus Gon, and the opponent after this match is Poco, and after Poco there's Killua, and the final opponent for this side is Gitaraka. On the right side, it's Hisoka versus Kurapika. The next opponent would be Podoro, and then Leorio being the final one for the right side. It makes more sense when you see how the matchups have been structured. And there are looks of surprise from the participants, especially Killua and Kurapika, but nobody says a thing after seeing the matchups. So Netero continues. He talks about the rules of the final phase. First off, if a participant wins their match, they pass the exam and they move out of the tournament. Those who do not win their matches, they stay in the tournament and they advance into the tournament until there is one participant who is eliminated. So the participants have at least 2 chances to win a match. Podoro asks a question: why is the structure of the matchups, why is it not balanced? And Netero explains that the matchups are based on points that were given to the participants during the 4th phase. And Killua, he speaks up, he's not happy about the matchups. He asks Netero, how were those points determined? Netero says he can't tell him because the method of how the points were calculated is a secret. But he can tell him about what criteria factors were looked at when the calculations were made. The calculations rely on 3 key attributes: physical ability, mental ability, and charisma. When physical ability was evaluated, things like speed, agility, endurance, and use of the 5 senses were taken into consideration. For mental ability, things like fortitude, adaptability, judgment, creativity were looked at. As for charisma, this is a little harder to define for Netero. yet it is a valuable attribute that a hunter should have. You could think of it as having the it factor. If any of you are wrestling fans, you might have heard this time and time again that, oh, this person, that person, they've got it. They've got the it factor. So, yeah, you can think of it that way. So Killua is hearing all this and he wonders if maybe his personality might have affected his position in the tournament, because we've seen that he's a skilled individual, so he should have been placed high in the tournament. But when he looks at the matchups, his position is much lower than even Gon. So Netero continues, says weapons are allowed, and the way to win a match is to make your opponent quit. If a participant kills their opponent, he will be disqualified and the exam will end with all the other participants passing. And now, with all the rules out of the way, the first match begins. So Hanzo and Gon, they step forward to face each other, with the referee of the match being one of the suited officials wearing some dark shades. Is a man named Masta or Masuta. Hanzo recognizes Masuta. He says, "Yo, you were following me during the fourth phase." And Masta, surprised by this, having been seen, and Hanzo reveals that all the participants had one of the examiners keeping an eye on them. And Kurapika, he says to Leorio that he noticed this, but he wasn't sure if he should tell them. Gon, surprise, surprise, didn't know about this. So Hanzo asks Master to clarify the main rule of the matches. You just have to make your opponent admit defeat, right? No knockouts, no fouls. Not Kurapika, but Master confirms. Just make your opponent quit to win the match. Then Hanzo looks at Gon, and he can tell that Gon could be a troublesome opponent for him. But as for Gon, he sees Hanzo, he can tell, yeah, he's got the strength, he's got the speed. But Gon is pretty confident in his own speed and thinks he can find a way to win. So the fight begins. Gon immediately dashes away from Hanzo, only to be surprised to see Hanzo has caught up with him. And then the ninja just delivers this fast chop to the back of Gon's neck, knocking him down and out. And then Hanzo is noticed that, Gon was pretty confident in his natural speed. It was pretty good for someone his age. That's quite impressive. And Leorio and Kurapika, they're watching this. They're completely speechless. Killua isn't surprised, because he says, Hanzo's strike, it would have just been enough to stun him. How could Gon not have anticipated it? So Hanzo says, in a normal match, this would have been the end. He would have been declared the winner. So he wakes up Gon, and we see Gon is feeling some pain. And Hanzo tells him, you're not in great physical shape. But that's fine, because the hit that he delivered on Gon was meant to prevent Gon from responding properly. Then Hanzo continues and he says, he's clearly experienced, so it would be a good idea if Gon quits this match. But Gon refuses, and Hanzo strikes him in the head, and he tells Gon being stubborn is not going to help him. He should quit now, so that he won't have a hard time recovering for the next match. But again, Gon refuses to quit, and he receives another hit for being stubborn. So Leorio, as he's watching this, he's getting upset. He's urging Gon to stop being stubborn and just quit the match. Kurapika, he understands how Leorio feels, but if he were in Gon's place right now, would he give up? Leorio says, no, I would not. I'd rather die. But he's not just going to stay there, just stand there and stay silent while his friend is getting beaten up in front of him. Kurapika doesn't, he doesn't counter Leorio, but deep down he thinks Gon should quit because clearly this is not working out for him. Even Menchi makes a comment that the participants, although they are unlikely to forfeit a match, this situation is not in Gon's favor at all. There's no word from the chairman, the man who set up this matchup. He's just watching. And this fight carries on for 3 hours. This match goes on. And we see Gon is on the floor. He's bruised. There's spots of his own blood on the floor around him. Leorio has had enough of this. He challenges Hanzo to fight him instead. But Hanzo just tells him, hey, if you can't handle this match, you might as well just leave. And a couple of officials, they have to step in and block Leorio from interfering in the match. And they tell him if he interferes, Gon is the one who will get disqualified. So Leorio, is furious now, but he can't do anything. So he just has to stand there, and then he sees Gon. He's slowly getting back to his feet, and he assures Leorio he's fine, he can take it. And Hanzo's surprised by this. So then he goes over, he pushes Gon back onto the floor, he turns him over, he holds Gon's left arm behind him, and he tells him, I'm going to break your arm unless you quit. There are no jokes this time from Hanzo. We've seen Hanzo, sorry. Most of the time he's just been a comedy character, he talks too much and so on. Now that's gone. That's no way. He's serious now. And Gon realizes that he's serious. But still, he flat out refuses to quit. And the last panel of this page, all you see is a sound effect. The sound of a bone break. That's how you end that chapter. So let's get into chapter 34 now. The 5th phase has begun, and someone has just had their arm broken. Chapter 34. The first candidate accepted? ? Previous chapter ended the sound of Gon's arm being broken. This chapter begins with the sound of Gon screaming in pain. Poco can't believe Hanzo actually went ahead and did it. Gon's on the floor, he's clutching his arm, he's gritting his teeth. As Hanzo says, now you can't use that left arm. Leorio, again, is beyond furious. He's standing there watching what has happened. He warns Kurapika, hey, don't stop him if this match goes any further. He's going to beat up Hanzo. And Kurapika just says, I'm not going to stop you. And we see the look on Kurapika's face, his eyes. They haven't turned scarlet, but there is a light shade of pink. It's getting to him now. But again, they can't do anything to help their friend. So Hanzo takes this time to share some information about him. And he does, a scumbag move of, as he's sharing the information, he's decided to do a one-armed handstand with his right hand. And he says he's from a clan of shinobi that have been training him since he was a child. For 18 years, he has built up incredible physical strength and has improved his skills. At Gon's age, Hanzo had already killed people, which doesn't impress Killua. He doesn't think that's anything to brag about. So then Hanzo says, telling Gon all of this, it's not to upset him, it's just to emphasize that Gon cannot defeat Hanzo in this fight. So he's still balancing on his right arm, and then he looks in front of him, and Gon has gotten up and he just kicks Hanzo across the face. he just kicks Hanzo across the face, and he just tells him, just because you're 6 years older than me, it doesn't matter. This fight was not about showing off their physical strength. It's a battle of endurance. Who's going to give up first? So Hanzo gets up, he's got a bloody nose now, and he sees that Gon won't accept the option to quit. So he's decided to use drastic measures. So Hanzo reveals a hidden blade from the bandages wrapped around his forearms. So from his right forearm, from those bandages, there's a blade that shoots out. And he tells Gon, now I'm going to cut off one of your legs. Gon responds saying, oh, that wouldn't be a great idea, because even though Gon doesn't want his leg cut off, he still will not quit. So he proposes that he and Hanzo, they find another way to fight each other. And what we get now is Hanzo, his reaction is very comical. He's just annoyed by Gon not understanding the situation. He's just threatened to cut off his leg. He'll even go far to cut off both of his legs. Yet Gon, he just simply tells him, oh, if you do that, I'll bleed to death. And that would get Hanzo disqualified. Even the referee, Masta, he confirms this. So this exchange, it just lightens the mood, despite what just happened with Gon having his arm broken. Even Hisoka and Bodo, they are amused by this. Killua, although he's the odd one out, he just doesn't believe what's happening, because Gon has just suffered a major injury. Why is the mood lightened up? So Hanzo, he gets serious again, and he shoots his arm forward, the blade tip pressing against Gon's forehead, and some blood is drawn, and it runs down Gon's face, but he remains determined, and he continues to face Hanzo, who reminds Gon that he can always try again next year. There's no need for him to risk his life like this. And Killua agrees with Hanzo. You can see that the power gap between Gon and Hanzo is wide. There's no way for him to close that gap in just this fight. Kurapika, you see him, is about to take a step forward, but Leorio raises a hand to stop him. And what's interesting is Leorio is no longer furious. Instead, he's got a little smile on his face now as he's watching Gon. So what's going on now? Hanzo, he demands to know why Gon would go this far and put his life on the line. Why doesn't he just give up now? And Gon, he simply answers he wants to see his father. His father, who is a hunter and is out there in the world somewhere. Gon says there is a chance of him meeting him someday, which is why he cannot give up here. He cannot. So Hanzo warns him that if you choose to stay here, you will die. But then Hanzo can see that Gon will not change his mind. So Hanzo retracts the long blade and he forfeits the match. But Gon won't let this slide. He wants them to find another way to continue the fight. And they proceed to have this shouting match where Hanzo is telling Gon, I just admitted defeat, how come that's not good enough for you? And Gon is saying, no, I want a proper fight. We should come up with something. Surely we can, right? But nope. Hanzo, he just simply knocks him out with a strong right uppercut and calls him an idiot. And he turns to Masuta and the other officials and he reaffirms that he has forfeited the match and will fight in the next one. He points out that Gon's stubbornness could lead to him being disqualified, and if Gon were to exit the tournament by disqualification, it wouldn't make the tournament any more fun. So the chapter comes to an end with Netero looking at Gon as he's lying on the floor unconscious, and he's wondering, hasn't he seen this sort of thing happen before? maybe he has, given that, Gon's father was a hunter, was Netero there when Jing, I should say, took part in the hunter exam. Never know. So that was chapter 34. Unfortunately for Gon, wanting a proper fight with Hanzo, knocked out with one punch. So we move on to the final chapter of the volume. I think you've noticed how swift this volume was. There was some action, but it just went on very, very quickly. And here we are reaching the final chapter. Chapter 35, Light and Darkness, Part 1. So we see Gon, he wakes up, he's in bed, his left arm is in a sling. He turns and he sees there's someone sitting beside the bed reading a book. That person is Satotsu. And Gon asks him, where is he? Satotsu tells him this is a room which is next to the one which was set aside for the final phase. And this helps to refresh Gon's memory. He remembers he was in the middle of the final phase. As Satotsu, he assures him that his left arm will heal quickly because the break was clean. And this is when Gon remembers who broke his arm, who else but Hanzo. Then Satotsu, he extends a hand to Gon and congratulates him. And at first Gon wants to protest, but Hanzo, he won't let him protest. He takes Gon's free hand and he shakes it and says, just as losers cannot be declared winners, winners cannot be declared losers. And Gon was declared a winner, so he just has to accept it. And Satotsu then says that if Gon thinks he doesn't have the qualifications to be a hunter, then he is free to get rid of the hunter license. He is free to sell it even, because there are many collectors out there in the world who would pay a lot of money to buy a hunter license, because no one else except for Gon would be able to use it. But Gon should be aware that once a participant has become a hunter, they cannot take part in the hunter exam again. And Satotsu adds that, which is why those who are recognized as hunters, they are regarded favorably because of, having passed such a difficult exam. So it's really important that, you accept being a hunter. And also there are those who take part in the exam who've got evil intentions. They're only in the exam just to earn the title of hunter. But the chances of them, coming back to take part in the exam, they're very slim. So then from the front pocket of his jacket, Satotsu takes out a hunter license card, shows it to Gon, and he says, for many hunters, this card is beyond valuable, even more valuable than their own lives. But also there are some hunters who just think it's just a priceless artifact. It's like jewelry, just something they can display in the living room, But what matters the most is what a person becomes. Once they become a hunter, who they go on to grow into what they become. So Gon asks Satotsu, okay, what's your occupation exactly? And Satotsu reveals that he renovates, he restores, and he preserves ruins. Initially, he did it for fame, but then he saw the work of another hunter, and this made Satotsu change his ways, because this other hunter spent his own fortune just to try and renovate and preserve ruins to a state as close as possible to their original state. And then he would let people visit these ruins. So this level of work has become the world standard for the renovation of ruins. And Satotsu sees this hunter as his role model and hopes to meet him someday so he can thank him. So he asks Gon if he's heard of the Lurker ruins or the Luluka ruins. Gon, he's certainly heard of them thanks to hearing about them from Kaito many years ago. And Satotsu, he recommends Gon should visit the ruins if he ever gets the opportunity. And Gon, he agrees to do so. So Satotsu, he hands Gon the hunter license and says he can use it however he wants to because he has earned the trust of the Hunter Association. And Gon accepts his hunter license and says there are people he's indebted to. It's thanks to their help he got to this point. And so once he's paid off that debt to those people, that's when he'll use the hunter license. And once again, Satotsu congratulates him. So congratulations to Gon, he's finally earned his hunter license. Took us 4 volumes, but here we are. Congratulations to Gon. So he asks about the other participants. Are they still fighting? And Satotsu says the hunter exam has already ended. Gon had slept for an entire day. The participants who won their hunter licenses, they're taking part in a brief course, which Gon will also take part in later. Then Gon asks, okay, which participant lost? And Satotsu hesitates a little, and we get a flashback to the point where Gon was knocked out by Hanzo. You see referee Masta, he picked up Gon, he carried them away, as Chairman Netero responded to what Hanzo said in the previous chapter. And he says Gon has been declared the winner and he'll receive his hunter license. And there was just a funny little line that he says where Netero says even if Gon threatens to kill him, he'll still get his hunter license. He can't change that. So as Hanzo is walking away, he passes Killua, who asks him why did he lose on purpose? Because for someone as skilled as Hanzo, surely he could have found other ways of making Gon give up without killing him. Then Hanzo explains that usually when you torture someone, he assumes they'll hold a grudge against him for the pain and the injuries that he inflicts upon them, but he's not bothered by this. He then says someone can tell when one person has rage, has anger, has hate towards them just by looking into their eyes. It doesn't matter how much experience, how much training you've done to try and hide those emotions. You can't keep those emotions from showing in your eyes. But Hanzo did not see any anger or hatred in Gon's eyes, even after having his arm broken. To Hanzo, it was as if Gon had forgotten what had happened and didn't hold a grudge against him. And this impressed Hanzo, and that's why he decided to forfeit the match. So the tournament would continue. The second match would be Kurapika versus Hisoka. And we flash forward back to the present, where Gon has been told which participant didn't pass the exam. It's Killua. But why? Why would Killua lose? Why would he not get his hunter license? Then Satotsu says Killua made a big mistake and was disqualified for it, which surprises Gon because how could Killua make a mistake? So Satotsu clarifies and says Killua killed one of the participants, and we see Killua, one of the panels shows Killua. He's got blood on his face, there's blood on the purple sweater that he's wearing, there's spots of blood on it, and his right hand is dripping blood. And Satotsu explains that it happened very fast, just as the match had started, and he suspects that Killua intentionally got himself disqualified. Gon was being asleep when this happened. He has to be brought up to speed. So Satotsu starts from the Kurapika Hisoka match to tell him what happened. Now, we don't see how the match between Kurapika and Hisoka went, but Satotsu just says it went on for some time. And we see Kurapika, Hisoka, they've got cuts on their faces. And Satotsu says Hisoka whispered something to Kurapika and then forfeited the match. Yeah, just checking my notes just to be sure. So yeah, Hisoka whispered something to Kurapika and then forfeited the match. That was it. The third match was between Hanzo and Poko. It went the same way as Gon's match between Hanzo against Hanzo, with Poko quitting the match after Hanzo threatened not to go easy on him. The fourth match it was Kurapika who forfeited the match, because the fourth match would be Hisoka facing Bodoro. No, actually, yes, it was Hisoka who forfeited the match. Yes, Kurapika got his hunter license. The fourth match had Hisoka facing Bodoro, but it was a one-sided fight. Although Bodoro would refuse to quit, Hisoka just knocked him down, whispered something to him, and Bodoro quit the match. The fifth match was said to be Poku versus Killua, but Killua simply walked away from the match because he didn't think the match would be any fun for him. And Satotsu believes Killua did this because he was confident he would win his next match. Match number 6 would have been Leorio versus Bodoro, but Leorio requested for the match to be moved forward because of Bodoro's injuries. So as a result, the next match began, which would be Killua versus Gitaraka. And this was the match where Killua made his mistake. Gitaraka recognizes Killua, much to Killua's surprise. And he says to Killua, "It's been a while." And then he proceeds to remove the needles from his face, and the pins and needles. His face changes into its true form, and the chapter and volume 4 end with Killua seeing the face of his big brother Illumi. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how you end a volume. Big reveal, gives you a reason to go get volume 5. At this point, I just have to say, if you've been following this series up to this point and you still weren't sure whether Hunter X is for you, after seeing this, my hope is you're at least interested in reading volume 5, finding out what has happened, because so far Gitaraka / Illumi, the only other participant that he's interacted with, that he knows of, has been Hisoka. Nobody else until now. So yeah, this was incredible. For those of you who are fans of hunterxhunter already, maybe you're looking forward to this moment, maybe you'd forgotten about this moment, but there we are. Illumi has been revealed, and you just have to wonder what happens next. Was it Illumi that Killua killed? What happened? So I just thought this was a very cool way to end the volume. And if you wanted to recommend Hunter x Hunter to someone new, just give them the first 4 volumes and they see this. So this is where we come to the end. As for my final thoughts, I thought this was a very fast-paced volume. I liked that it was focused somewhat on Gon. It started with Gon succeeding in getting Hisoka's badge, only to have it stolen by Gereta, and then he's saved by Hisoka, who comes back, gives him his own badge and Gon's badge to make sure Gon stays in the exam. And just for refusing to take Hisoka's badge, Gon gets punched, and not being able to respond with his own punch to Hisoka. You can understand that kind of frustration, because he realized he's not strong enough to face this guy in a one-on-one fight. So I think it was an important point in the volume where we saw that it really bothered Gon, but it was a moment of growth, because he remembered his friends and he went out to search for his friends. He found them, he saved them from a very dangerous trap, the cave with the snakes. We saw that he's willing to go that far for his friends, and I think it just made him a better character and gives people more reasons to invest in him and to see what happens with the rest of Gon's adventure. We saw him, his fight with Hanzo didn't end well, but he earned Hanzo's respect to the point where Hanzo, forfeited the match. Gon was declared the winner, and he earned the trust of the Hunter Association. He earned the Hunter license, and that's the first major step on this journey of his to become a hunter. So I just thought this was a great volume for that. We got to see our main character reach, the end of quote-unquote stage 1, which would be getting the hunter license. Going all the way back to volume 1, where in order to get his aunt to to give a consent for him to take part in the exam, he had to be in a swamp to fish this elusive fish. 5 people failed to catch it. He managed to catch it. Just from there, all the way forward to what happened in this volume, with him fighting Hanzo and then eventually getting the hunter license. And then also at the end with Killua finding his big brother Illumi, having been one of the participants in the hunter exam. What could happen in volume 5? Can't wait to find out what happens. So now that we've covered the first 4 volumes of Hunter x Hunter, what's the plan going forward? Well, this is where we'll switch over to the other manga title which I'll be covering for the MultiMangaverse. The next 5 episodes actually will be for that manga. I say 5 because in the next episode 5, we'll be looking at what could count as volume 0 of the other manga title. I say would count because it's not officially volume 0, but it could count as volume 0. I would think there are maybe a few of you who might get a good guess of what that manga title is. If you do get it right, congratulations. I hope you're looking forward to seeing this manga being explored in this series. If you do not know, my hope is you will at least tune in to find out what that manga is, and maybe it could be a title that you've known about and you weren't sure, do I want to get into it? Is the hype worth it or not? So my hope is the next 5 episodes will give you enough reasons to give that other manga title a try. Hunter x Hunter does have a volume 0, but the reason I didn't start with that is because volume 0 was released in 2030, several years later. I believe it was distributed to fans in Japan who were going to watch the first animated movie for Hunter x Hunter, Phantom Rouge. So volume 0 was 2 parts. It was a story of Kurapika. So you see, it wouldn't have made sense to start with it because Kurapika is not the main character of the story. Gon would meet Kurapika chapter 2 on the ship. So having to explain who Kurapika was when we don't even know who the main character of Hunter x Hunter was wouldn't have made any sense. So what I've decided is, once we get to the chapters and the volumes that were released in 2013, we'll look at volume 0 then. I think by that time there'll be at least enough for us to take a look at volume 0 so that it makes sense as compared to looking at it now. So just make a note of that there is a volume 0 for Hunter x Hunter. Okay, so we've reached the end of this episode. If you have any feedback, questions, comments, in the description you will find a link where you can send all your feedback. It's MultiMangaverse at xmail.net. That's the email address. Please make sure just include your name, where you're emailing from with your feedback, so that at least I know who emailed what. And if I can make a request, I might as well say it now, that the big plan for the series is, once we've caught up in either Hunter x Hunter or the other manga title, I'll ask you what the next manga we should look at. So what you can do, starting now actually, with your feedback, you can send in your recommendation, your suggestion of a manga title that you would like us to look at in this series. At least one, right? And then the plan is, once it's time to pick the next manga title, I'll pick from the manga titles that you've sent, I'll pick 5, and I'll ask you to vote on, from those 5, which one we'll read. We'll pick one, we'll read the first 4 volumes of that manga, and then I'll ask you again, do we continue with that manga, or we go to the remaining 4 and we pick the next one and we read that one. So for now, with your feedback, please include a manga title that you would like us to look at, so that at least I'm making a list of all the manga that you're recommending and suggesting, and it will make things easier when it's time to pick. Okay, thank you for listening. Thank you for making it to the 4th episode of this young series. I wasn't sure how it was going to do, but I'm hoping that it, at least for Hunter x Hunter, it has made new fans for this manga, because I believe it's one of the best manga ever created. It's just unfortunate that Togashi's health problems have kept him from being consistent with it, but hopefully he's recovering, he's getting better, and perhaps, like I'd said in previous episode, before the end of the year we'll see new chapters of Hunter x Hunter being released. So thank you once again for listening to this. In the description, in the show notes, there are support links as well. If you want to support the series, the Patreon link, the PayPal link. I had the Subscribestar account, I just have to sort that out, but once it's sorted out, that will be included as well. So thank you again. Look forward to the next episode. I'm looking forward to revealing what that other manga title is, so please look forward to episode 5. Thank you, have a great weekend, and take care.